Do you remember in elementary school, during arts and crafts, taking a piece of paper and folding it in halves or in quarters, cutting little designs in it, and then slowly unfolding it to reveal a beautiful, perfectly symmetric, lace-like doily? Well, I'm glad that you do. I usually messed up the cutting or unfolding it way too fast and ripped the whole thing. But back to that picture-perfect doily, that complete mirror image. One can say that it's the best way to describe the gospel we just read this morning from the bonus chapter of John. I say bonus chapter because if your Bible was paginated so that chapter 20 ended at the bottom of the right-hand side of your Bible, you'd think there wasn't a need to flip the page. It concludes, now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples that are not written in this book, but these are written so that you may continue to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that through believing in him, you might have life in his name. But just like the great 3-paged hymn, Hail the Festival Day, surprisingly, there's more. It's stylistically different than the first part, and yet it adds a particular beauty to the piece. Our gospel starts off with disciples fishing, or trying to, at least. Then we hear that just after daybreak, Jesus stood on the beach, but the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. This is the second time we hear about Jesus appearing at daybreak. The first one we heard 2 weeks ago on Easter morning. Both times he appears, but people do not recognize him. Easter morning, Christ was the gardener. This morning, he's a wise fisherman. This Piscine person yells out to the disciples, "Children, you have no fish, have you?" And then tells them to cast the net to the right side of the boat, and that they will find some. And here's where we see our first reversal, our first mirror image. In Matthew and Mark, there was an unanswered question last time the disciples were on a boat. In that infamous account, the boat was being tossed about in a storm. Jesus said, "Be still," and the waters calmed. The disciples asked each other, "Who is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" This morning, we finally get the answer. It is the Lord. Then just like Adam and Eve covered themselves as they heard God's voice in the garden when they realized they were naked, Peter, having just heard the voice of God, realizes he is naked and puts some clothes on. But soon Peter will have his sins forgiven. Our second reversal this morning. For Peter, the smell of charcoal fire is the stench of betrayal. For him, he'll always have flashbacks to that evening when thrice he denied knowing Jesus. But for Christ, who makes all things new, the smell of a charcoal fire is the fragrance of forgiveness. It is the aroma of second chances. For now, Peter will thrice affirm his love for Christ. And now Christ will remind him of his true vocation, that call from the beginning of the gospel. Peter's call to fish for people, to feed my lambs, to tend my sheep. And with that, Christ issues his last reversal. He shares with Peter that this new life will lead to death. That is, by following him, by proclaiming God's forgiveness and love, by proclaiming that Christ is risen and that death is no more. The cost Peter will pay is that he will die, that he will be crucified. But for Christ, death isn't the end. It's the beginning of another reversal. For in death we find life. In Peter's call, he will shepherd the church and bring the gospel to life. He will proclaim good news to the poor, release to the captives, and new life to the dying and to the dead. An eternal message of hope. He accomplishes all this by dying to the life of fastening his belt and going wherever he wished, a life that leads to empty nets, and instead lives a life of following Christ, listening to Jesus' call to love and serve God and each other, a way of living that leads to life abundant, a catch of 153 fish to be exact. This bonus chapter of John fills the Christian heart with hope. Sins are forgiven and new life is abound. But better than that, it reminds us of a critical truth. That Easter isn't one day. That new life isn't contained to one glorious Sunday morning. It's abound. It's happening in the now, and it's happening all around us. Dawn can happen at any time. So be on the lookout. Listen to people calling you to something new. That might just be Jesus saying, "Come, follow me." And who knows? You might just find new and abundant life.